We are about 2.5 weeks away from the presidential election. Sorry, sorry to remind you. I know that for many of us, anxiety is high, worry about what the future holds feels ever present. I've been thinking a lot about change because within a month there will be a lot of change, and we need it, but it remains to be seen what kind we'll end up with. And we are going through changes here in this congregation. Like many others, we have faced contraction in our community, which only worsened in the wake of COVID. We faced changing financial circumstances, recessions that have meant less money coming in, and inflation that has meant more money going out. We and many other congregations are in the midst of making hard choices about who we are, who we want to be, and how we can get there given current conditions. It has felt painful at times. It can seem scary. And over many years of considering the changing face of congregational life in America, there are some things that I can say with certainty. I'm only going to say two of them today. There's more. You can come and ask me later. But the two that I'm going to say today are, first, there is and always will be a need for congregational life. And second, that the continuation of congregational life depends on us being thoughtful and visionary and proactive. Now, you've heard me say the first point before, that there is and always will be a place for congregational life, and I say it because I believe it with my whole self. A long time ago, one of my atheist children asked me why we have congregations. My answer hasn't changed much. Because people, whatever we believe, need communities to belong to. Communities of care, communities in which they can reflect on their life and be encouraged to live in accordance with their values. And because people need consistency, which is to say, we need a context in which to practice our best selves and our most honest living. And we need that context to be solid and routine and present. Because while habits are hard to form, they're very easy to break. So we need to know that there is a place for us, waiting and ready for when we show up. I firmly believe that Unitarian Universalist congregational life, which I view as, at least in part, the intentional building up of communities of care based in clear values, I firmly believe that it quite literally saves lives. I know this from experience with folks who have shared that it was their congregation that helped them gather the courage to get sober, or it was their congregation that helped them feel safe enough to come out, or it was their congregation that embraced their true identity as they transitioned. There is and always will be a need for a community that sees people, welcomes people, and celebrates them, embracing all. There will always be a need for a community that encourages values-based living and provides time and space to practice that and invites us then into changing the world together. There will always be a need because the world will always need more love in it and more people living from that place. Now, that second truism, that to continue congregational life, we must be thoughtful and visionary and proactive, you may not have heard me say that quite as clearly unless you've been in positions of leadership, but it's another truth that I believe with my whole self. What it means is that we don't, as an institution, sit quietly until a crisis and then anxiously react to it, feeling backed into a corner. It means that we look at the past that built this place, that provided this community to us, the intentions and the work that went into that. It means we look at the present, what is happening to other congregations and to this one, and it means that we make real plans for the future based on the values that guide us and based on the congregation we want to become, not based in fear, right? Now, it means sometimes we make hard and painful choices, and it means at times that we risk making the wrong choices. It means ultimately that we are doing Yes, we're always talking, but we're also doing, exercising our power and our autonomy rather than wringing our hands. Fundamentally, it means we are accepting what is real and we are facing it together. And that's a bit of wisdom that applies to our own lives too. Now look, as Unitarian Universalists, we absolutely acknowledge that there are forces beyond our control that impact us. We are not omnipotent, we are not completely in control. Many things affect the lives we lead. Our childhood and upbringing, the kind of love we have been given or been deprived of, the opportunities that were made for us by others. And more broadly and insidiously, there's the misogyny that still is alive and well in our culture. There is racism that is so deeply ingrained we cannot seem to excise it. There are capitalist structures that are designed to widen the wealth inequality gap. We know that our lives are not perfectly our own. Things will happen to us that we wish had not. Our lives will wend down paths we had never envisioned and did not intend. And even so, I would argue that it is fundamental to Unitarian Universalism to believe that we can also make choices and that we are not without power. We can, from the first, make decisions about how we will approach our lives and the things that we experience. We can decide to approach the world with love, with compassion, with righteous anger that does its best to help the world change. We may struggle to keep that approach at all times. I struggle to keep that approach at all times, but we can choose to keep coming back again and again to approaching this world and the things that happen with love and with our values intact. Now, we may need support in this. That is what a community whose values match ours and that helps us remember who we want to be, that's why that community is so valuable. And so are the friends and family who encourage us, the therapists and teachers and mentors who help us, the practices that give us practice. It takes work to live our lives aligned with our beliefs and approaching our journeys as we truly want to, and the work is worth it. Beyond how we approach and experience our lives, we can also exercise our strength and our power. Whether we face decisions about our partnerships, our work lives, our friendships, or anything else, this begins by seeing clearly what is happening. Facing the truth isn't always easy. It can feel easier to bury our head in the sand or lie to ourselves. And yet we know that truth is imperative, especially in a world in which fact and fiction get fuzzier by the day. Being honest, looking honestly at the world is absolutely critical. And surrounding ourselves with others who are interested in truth, in honesty, not brutal honesty for the sake of cruelty, but compassionate honesty for the sake of growth. Surrounding ourselves with people like that can help us gain courage for this way of living. Once we open ourselves to what is real, the good and the bad, processing it, communicating it, digesting it, integrating it into our self-understanding and our standing of the world comes next. Again, we find that friends and family and professionals and communities like this can help us. When we have people to talk to, people to be real with, people who compassionately reflect back to us what we are saying and doing, we can understand better what our options are. And then we can choose. Life doesn't just happen to us. We have some agency, some autonomy. We have a role to play in our own destiny. We do not need to be passive. We don't need to allow life to roll over us. There's a Thoreau reading in our hymnal in which he talks about cornering life and sucking all the marrow out of it, whether he gets the good or the bad, and he's talking about a passion for actively living, for participating fully in his own life. in times of sorrow and in times of joy. And that, I think, is part of what we are called to do, to live fully, lovingly, compassionately, honestly, and fully, to not shy away from risks and leaps and hard choices in order to create for ourselves the lives we want to live. And this call to be proactive and not reactive, it stretches out into our workplaces, our families, our congregations, and to the nation and the world more broadly. For months, as I'm sure many of you know, we've been engaged in get out the vote activities, aware that apathy is what kills democracy. Complacency and passivity, these are what allow racism, misogyny, oppression, and the forces of destructive capitalism to continue. We know that one of the ways we are called to live fully is by fully participating in building our shared future, whether that's here or out there. Our lives shrink when we do not fully participate in them, and our participatory democracy dies without participation. Just as we long to and are called to live our own lives grounded in our values, so too we are called to build up this world we share with our values as the foundation. This means we vote in accordance with our belief in interdependence, in pluralism, in equity, in justice, in generosity, in transformation, in love, choosing candidates and ballot measures that align with these values and that will help to create the world we envision. And this means we act in accordance in our everyday lives. We act in accordance with our belief in all of these values, seeing clearly the places where this world needs to be changed, and then we work toward that change, alongside others in communities, alongside agencies whose values align with ours and who are working to create the world we envision. And it means we guide the future of this congregation in accordance with our belief in interdependence, in pluralism, in equity, in justice, in generosity, in transformation, in love. We think big about the way this place serves the world, and we do what is necessary to ensure that USR is here 50 years from now, to nurture children and families, to welcome anyone who walks through our doors, to support the work of justice, and to change our world. And for each of us, we live in accordance with these values in our everyday life. We embrace honesty even as we navigate these journeys of ours, in which change is inevitable. We grow even when it is hard. We face the comings and goings of our life with our whole selves, experiencing the pain and the joy. And we keep going, awake to and awakening to what is real, engaged fully in our living, grounded ever and always in love.